Hi friends, one last quick video before bed. It's called the 3 frames of expectation. It explains cognitive functions and expectations and why it's so difficult to get a handle on the subject. So, intro. Expectations, predictions, decisions, conclusions, and knowledge express distinct epistemics. While a decision maker, number one, while a decision maker may acknowledge that a predicted outcome is uncertain, A. Deciding follows from the expected outcome, not the more probable one. And I'll explain the difference as we go down. While relevant knowledge may help someone predict more successfully, predictions are never themselves examples of knowledge because you can't know a future that hasn't happened yet. Number 3, knowing sources in either experience or intuition. To know is to behave as though no further inform. To know is to behave as though one can be no further informed regarding the point in question because either the knowledge is subjective data, in other words, you remember you went to the store this morning, whatever anybody else says about it can't inform you any further, or because the knowledge predicates on irreducibilities. I can't explain why I knew that guy was really miserable. There's a lot of various cues, none of which is determinate, but all put together is. Expectations are only about the future, like predictions. Even if one expects the present to remain unchanged, it's still about the future. And unlike predictions, most expectations aren't understood as such until the expectations aren't met. So, when I get in my car to go to town in the morning, I expect the road to be open. If it's not, then I realize, hey, I had that expectation. Prior to that, I wasn't thinking about that expectation. Conclusions. Conclusions render statuses by a deliberation about a given unresolved question. They tell us what's happening, what should be happening, how important it is to you, why it's happening. That's what conclusions do. Statuses or conclusions only become knowledge by experience or intuition. What this means is if I come to a conclusion and repeat it plenty of times and read you the deliberation, eventually I cease to do the deliberation and simply accept it as something that is known. Or if I encounter a status and the explanation, argumentation, whatever, presentation is holistically convincing, then somebody might intuit that it's correct. So let's review here. Decisions are concretizing. Example, umbrella. I have to decide if I'm going to take an umbrella or not. It may or may not rain, but I act upon the expected outcome, not the probable one. In other words, I don't bring 80% of an umbrella. Conclusions are affirming or negating. So, an example is the Kaczynski Manifesto. My analysis of it, which was negating, was affording statuses to it. Those statuses were conditional in the sense that presumably if some new information were to come out that dramatically changed the landscape of the argumentation, I'd be open to changing my position on it. I can't conceive such a situation in this context with the Kazman thing, but, in general. Knowings are experience or intuition. They're either what I remember, example, I know how to hard boil an egg because I've done it before and I remember it's 17 minutes. Or what's obvious given observed factors, like the fact that we're selling our house right now is the obvious correct choice to make, but there's a lot of different specific factors that make it obvious. It's hard to reducibly explain why it's so obvious. Predictions, statements regarding the likelihood of future outcome. Predictions often justify conclusions, and conclusions can become knowledge by experience or intuition. but can also persist as a conditionally affirmed position. So, I would say that my position on Kaczynski and his manifesto is more or less treated as knowledge by me, whereas my position on, say, well, lots and lots and lots of things is conditional in the sense that it's the best argument now, pending new information. Expectations. Predictions that an individual perceives as knowing comprise expectations. Individuals are likely to become aware of an expectation only after it's not met. Unmet expectations distress people even when the reality is better than the expected one. Where do expectations come from? 3 places. 2 of them are knowledge. Particularist knowledge plus extrapolating past results. So it's always gone like this before. I know it's going to go like this now, which means I expect it's going to go like this now. Intuition plus observing current dynamics. I can tell that this is going to get heated and these people are going to get into an argument. I can tell by reading their body language and stuff right now before it's even happened. In other words, I expect it. I might perceive it as knowing it. But the third kind of expectation is the whole point of this video, configural projection. This is the kind of expectation that's tricky to get past because it's an expectation that cascades down. So my tool function is introverted thinking. What that means is that I expect people to hear my words, understand them for what they mean, and deal with that accordingly. In other words, I expect people to use deliberative processes to draw conclusions about what I'm saying based on the merits of what I'm saying. That's a difficult expectation to shake. So that even if a good friend of mine tells me things that I should expect and understand why, and therefore they should not surprise me or distress me, nevertheless distress me in some kind of surprise fashion because I can't operate in a world in which I don't have as a tacit expectation that what I'm saying is going to be evaluated in terms of the meaning of the words, and my communication is not going to be evaluated according to some heuristic, holistic, either knowing by intuition or projecting of their own experience onto me, right? Because I'm not relevant to what I'm saying. Because I'm a TI tool user, I project that onto the world, that's what everybody needs to do in order to function properly, because that's how I do everything, right? So that kind of configural projection is something I encountered in my conversation with Corey earlier, where he's projecting an expectation that his intuition is the right tool for everything. His intuition is more reliable than anybody else's approach, whether it be intuition or something else. He probably assumes and projects that everybody's using intuition too, same kind of introverted intuition he's using. They're just using it a lot worse. So, neither of our expectations are met in this conversation because, on the one hand, he's conveying to me stuff that he knows with his intuition, and he knows it, which means he doesn't believe it's subject to further being informed further about it. But he doesn't understand all of this stuff that I deliberate out, right? So he's not making these kind of distinctions. He's not doing the high level of metacognition that I'm doing. And yet, despite all the metacognition, my configural projection creates expectations that it's difficult for me to beat with constructed expectations predicated on things I know, because That's asking me to expect differently in this situation, or expect in this situation, given the specifics of it, in a way that runs afoul to my universal expectation that I have to have if I'm going to be a functional human being in the world. Namely, that what I do, say things, can have impacts on people's thinking and understanding because they've listened to the words and understood them as what they mean, not as some expression of error. So that's my last video for the night. I hope you enjoyed it.